Thank you, Todd. Appreciate the opportunity. I know that this is a subject matter that's near and dear to a number of our council members' hearts. And not pointing fingers, Brad. But what we wanted to do is we really view this as a series of work sessions to talk through this with all of you. First and foremost tonight, we wanted to bring our representatives that do this work in our organization forward to share with you what it is they're focused on, what's the scope of their work, how do they hold people accountable, what are some of the stats behind it, and then after this work session, we can have another work session where we sit down and say, okay, do we want to change things, do we want to modify things, and how do we want to go about doing that? So Megan's going to be kind of the MC, is that fair to say, as we work through the development process and walk you through this tonight. So Megan, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. So as the mayor mentioned, tonight's work session is really going to be focused on staff providing an overview of our inspection process during the construction of new developments. So with any new development, there are various city departments that have oversight and conduct inspections to ensure compliance with the municipal ordinances. Tonight's work session is largely focused on staff information and processes, and we do have a lot of information to cover. So as was mentioned, if there are additional work sessions that are needed in the future, we're happy to hold those. And if there are any questions on the information that is presented tonight, or if you'd like any clarification on our internal policies, please email them to me directly, and that way we can compile those and address them at a later work session date. But before I turn it over to the other departments, I would like to provide you all with just an overview of the construction process, because it does get somewhat cumbersome. And so just to start off with some baseline information. So all that is discussed tonight is what occurs after a project has been reviewed and approved through our Technical Advisory Committee, which is what we refer to as TAC. So once it has been approved and signed off by staff, we hold a pre-construction meeting on site with the developer. Grading begins, and our stormwater inspector ensures that all sediment remains on site. So that's throughout the grading process. Once grading is complete, infrastructure such as the local roads, utilities, and sidewalks are installed. And this really is following the timeline for a residential development. After all of the infrastructure is in, staff inspects to release that subdivision section for building permits, and the construction of the homes begins. Once the section of the subdivision is built out, we require 3-year sidewalk maintenance bonds, which was recent legislation in the past 5 years that was adopted. And then for newer subdivisions, we haven't had any that this applies to yet, but for newer subdivisions, we also require third-party maintenance inspection for common area improvements. And that's required before we turn over the common area to the HOA. So this entire process takes years to complete. As we know with Burton Falls, I think it started in, 2006? Yeah. And we're still completing construction on those homes. So this can be a very lengthy process. So to start with, I'm going to turn it over to Jason Armour, who is our stormwater engineer, to give you all an overview of the stormwater protection process.
Thank you, Megan. Council, my name is Jason Armour, stormwater engineer for the Department of Public Works. I'm here to talk to you about the water quality items associated with the new construction process. The Water Quality Division mainly focuses on stormwater plan review and inspection, so we basically make sure that there are erosion and sediment control measures in place on the construction plan before construction, and then we're following through in the field to make sure that those elements are maintained in the field to keep erosion from occurring on site, in a nutshell. So with that, we have, like Megan said, kind of starts with a pre-construction meeting where we kind of lay out the project expectations from the plans. Mainly perimeter controls are initiated with a construction entrance, and then as the contractor starts grading, some of the more crucial elements are installed throughout the project. We kind of our inspection process and enforcement process, how we go about that. Normally at the beginning of a project, we essentially kind of give them about 2 weeks to get things into compliance before we would fine. We start with an initial $100 fine. If that doesn't get their attention after a week, then we would escalate fines to $250, $500, $1,000, all the way up to $1,500. At the $1,500 level, if we're still not getting their attention, then we would talk about a stop work order, and I would usually run that by my supervisors prior to issuing a stop work order. Some of the data that we see with our inspections in 2020, in 2021 and 2022, we've had about 70 to 75 active sites at any one time. In 2021, we completed 1,125 inspections. We had about 365 failures and about 761 passes, and we issued about 32,000 in fees that year. 2022 to date, we've had 469 total inspections, 154 failures, 315 passes, and we've issued about 11,000 in fees to date. Some of our priorities, the main priority is basically keeping all the sediment on site if we can. Some of the main controls, we look at our sediment basins and sediment traps, and then we've really focused on stabilizing the site. The sooner we can get grass growing and get hard items down like stone, that significantly decreases erosion. And then we also try to keep an eye on mud tracking in the street as a focus. So, but our inspectors pretty thorough, and I'd like to say I think we have a pretty solid inspection program in the field. So, with that, that's kind of the water quality responsibility and process. Thank you. Sure.
One quick question that I'd like everybody to ask. What's the common violation that you're seeing in the field today?
Probably the most significant large common violation would be the stabilization. That is a hard animal to crack because you gotta, you kind of got to give some grace when they're actively grading, but the way we look at it, as soon as they're not actively grading a section of the site, we try to get pressure on them to get at least temporary mulch down. So that would probably be our main focus, I would say, throughout the project cycle.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I think Jason Taylor might be up next.
A man who needs no introduction, engineering director.
Good evening, council. For the record, Jason Taylor, Director of Engineering. I appreciate you guys listening to us here today about the engineering items and the inspection of our infrastructure. Every subdivision or development project does go through a routine laundry list of items that we inspect. Very similar to the other departments. We do the pre-construction meeting. Typically, it's one pre-construction meeting that all the departments are at, so that we can be a little bit more efficient. In the engineering items that we're wanting to make sure that we gain a better understanding is really what is their schedule? What is the anticipated time that they're going to hit some of the key points on the infrastructure? Whenever I'm talking about infrastructure from the engineering side, I'm really referring to items that are going to be publicly owned. So anything inside the public right-of-way or inside a sanitary easement. So storm, roadway, sanitary, signs, the pavement, things of that nature. And prior to being able to do any work, we require the developer contractor to submit a maintenance bond, or not a maintenance bond, a performance bond. In order to be able to submit that performance bond, that is then the design process and the plan review. We require their consultant to submit a detailed pay item list of the estimated construction cost. And sometimes they have actual contractor construction costs, which we review and ensure that it is accurate, because what they end up doing is they take that cost estimate, they submit it to the bank or whomever they're issuing their performance bond, and then they issue that back to us, so that if they ever walk away from the job with leaving something that's in the public right-of-way, sidewalks, something else, we can capitalize on that and cash that check, essentially, to be able to finish those improvements. So as they're going through the actual construction, there's a various list of items that we're trying to coordinate, and they provide that schedule. It's always changing on what the schedule is going to be, because they're in the same situation as what we are with our capital projects. So we're a little bit more reactive to them and what their needs are. For example, the stormwater or the storm sewer, what we're looking for is we're wanting to make sure that they have the correct pipe that was shown in the plans. So my inspectors are gonna be out there with their contractor, and we're gonna have the plan set with us. They're gonna have that pipe delivered. They're gonna go out, my inspector's gonna go out there either at that moment in time or some other time whenever the contractor's not aware of it, and mark the pipes that maybe have deficiencies in them. So if there's a crack in it, if there's a bell end that is chipped off of those pipes, they'll mark that. And then later they'll come back and tell the contractor, hey, you need, or send an email, you need to replace all the pipes that have orange paint on them. And that's whenever that they actually start the work. The contractor will let us know that they're getting ready to start trenching. They'll come out, my inspectors will get out there and watch them lay sticks of pipe and the manhole structures, watch to make sure that there's the correct fall. We don't have the as-built at that time, so we're not doing the shots. That is on the engineer of record for the design and the developer. But where we do check it is in the back end whenever they submit those as-built drawings, and that's at risk for the developer. If it is not at the inverts or doesn't have that positive drainage that ends up being a scenario that causes flooding or some other drainage issues, then at that time we work with them, because we do have maintenance bonds that we can execute on. But as we're working through that, we're making sure that, one, like I said, the pipe size, the structure material type, as well as the structure backfill is being utilized correctly, that they're not just putting dirt back. They're actually using structural backfill per our specs. And after that's completed, we'll do maintenance bonds on various stages of their work so that they can kind of move on to the next piece. Then really at the end of their 3-year maintenance bond, we'll do a final inspection to make sure there's not any issues. And we try to do that prior to the 3-year. That way we can continue to work with them if there's any issues, and we don't have to just keep holding on to it, because there is a time limit on those. Sanitary is a little different. Sanitary is a scenario that we actually require them, meaning the owner of the sanitary system is owned by the developer contractor and not by the city. We own, Jonathan Valenta and his team owns, maintains, operates the conveyance system, but we don't own the infrastructure. So if there's failures, that's acting as that 3-year maintenance bond in essence. Instead of requiring that maintenance bond, we require them to own it, so then we can then take it on at the end. And as part of that, again, we try to take at least 6 months in advance is where we start to try to target inspection, and we'll do a final punch list, and that's across the board on any items that we have related to infrastructure. And that punch list can include the casting elevations are not accurate, not correct. They don't have the right lids on them. There may be settling that occurs. There may be failures that have occurred inside the pavement, the storm, the pond, something of that nature. Some examples that we've recently had. We had one at Legacy there off of Cynthia Ann, north of 126 on the west side. The developer contractor had some sanitary pipe that had been placed after the pavement had been put in. Or sorry, prior to the pavement being put in. Well, with those laterals for all those homes, they didn't get proper compaction on that sanitary line. So it caused after they put the pavement in, not the surface layer, everything up to the intermediate, it settled. And it was clear as day that it was like a 2-foot wide settlement. So we worked over the course of about 18 months with that contractor and developer to correct that. They did some wedge and level, milling, and spot repair. They actually did a concrete cap on that as well. And my inspectors were there every time they were out there doing something to prevent that from being a future headache that the city had to take on. Then really, whenever it comes to the roadway side of things, one piece that is maybe not common knowledge is we have an internal policy with the pavement. Whenever they start their paving operations, we take it up to the intermediate layer, meaning that not putting the surface course, that final surface layer of the asphalt. And there's reasoning for that, and that's so that whenever, one, aesthetically it looks better. Whenever you have one smooth surface, you don't have a quilt network on a brand new roadway because there's failed areas. Because of that example I said about Legacy, essentially If there's a failure, we want that to be taken care of before we put the surface on. Another thing is that we don't want that truck traffic for all the construction. We want to minimize that. Unfortunately, the way that most subdivisions are constructed, they're constructed from the front to the back. So, that isn't 100% that we can prevent that from happening, but it is our way of being able to manage that. And then also, we do require that maintenance bond for the pavement. That doesn't take effect until after the surface layer is placed. And that is kind of that final walkthrough punch list that things are really wrapping up, and we're going to start taking over the signs, if they're public signs, the markings, and the pavement itself. But that is, in a nutshell, is how we get to the final point of record drawings, as well as part of that record drawing, we do as-built drawings, and that is something that we have as a standard process that their consultant, the developer's consultant, will actually submit all of those as-built drawings. We work through that with them. Sometimes you get a new designer a consultant that may not know the process very well, but someone on my staff works hand in hand with them through that to make sure that we have all the line work we need, all the inverts, elevations for the sanitary, for the storm, all of that is up to date, and curb ramps are installed correctly. They're denoted in our system as being compliant, and then we can sign off and say that everything's in our system. But that is, we house all of the maintenance bonds in the engineering office, and whenever we actually are able to release after that final inspection, we hand them back to the developer contractor. But I'm going to hand it off to Megan. Thank you.
And just real quick, before I turn it over to Todd to discuss the building permits, so all of that occurs before any construction of the homes begins. And so Jason's checking on the infrastructure side, and then the city planners go out there and they check for the perimeter landscaping and lighting in the subdivision as well. And so then at that point is when we release for building permits, and then it really gets turned over to Todd's group.
Good evening, Council. My name is Todd Succi. I'm Building Commissioner for the city. I've been asked to compile some data regarding permits and fees. I'm going to start with the permits issued. The data is from 2021, so some of this stuff doesn't exactly come out crystal clear. Permit could be applied for in 2021 but not issued until 2022. So these numbers are subject to change, but generally speaking, we issue between 400 and 600 new family permits annually. When it comes to my group, we started with plan review. From plan review, we get through the comments section, we get the permit to the point where it's approved. Once it's approved, then the inspection process starts. In the perfect world, there's four required inspections. It starts at a footer, goes to an underslab, then to a framing, and finishes at a final. More often than not, we see temporary finals before the finals because of the seasonal changes and the inability to get landscaping in during the winter months. I have also compiled some fees associated with the builders and the 10 most common violations that we see through the construction process. I can go through those. I don't know who has it in front of them. But one of the biggest things we've seen is uncontrolled trash and debris on site. We fought really hard to get dumpsters on site over the past 18 months, and then COVID came, and one of the biggest things we've run into is no trash truck drivers. So we have dumpsters that are full, and then they get over full, and then we end up with piles of trash outside the dumpsters, which end up blowing from community to community and into ponds and in neighborhoods and things of that nature. The next common violation we have is failure to post a lot sign. We're required to post a lot sign with the physical address, the lot number, and have the permit posted on site. In 2021, that was the second biggest violation we've seen. Erosion control, as others have mentioned, being my group is in these neighborhoods often. Not only are we enforcing the building code standard, but we're also enforcing other city ordinances as well. So if we arrive on site with an inspection that's scheduled and we see that the erosion control is down, that's also part of our violation process. Damaged trusses is another one we see a lot of. I don't know how many of you have seen lumber delivered in a neighborhood that's partially occupied, but usually it's delivered in a dump truck or a tilt bed truck. The driver backs up to the curb, he hits the button, it goes, he drives out from underneath it, and your new home falls on the street, essentially. So we saw a lot of damaged trusses in 2021. A lot of overcut lumber in the house as well. I believe a lot of this is coming from the turnover that we see in the building community. Fire blocking issues would be the 6th most common we see, but I don't think there's a building department anywhere in the state is going to say that that's not on their list. Transitions from level to level, horizontally every 10 foot through your wall where there's wiring, it needs to have a block at the end of that 10-foot barrier to stop the fire from spreading through the wall cavity. We've been seeing a lot of stair and riser inconsistencies as well. Anybody ever walk up a stair and stub your toe on that one stair, you know, a bunch of different times? So there's certain tolerances. Has to be within 3/16 of an inch of typical the whole way through the run of the stairs. This year we've seen a lot of those as well. Box fill electrical calculations, mainly in kitchens because the amperage changes from 15 to 20, and in smoke detectors, interwired, interconnected smoke detectors. Unless you increase the size of the box, the smoke detector on the tail end is always going to have too much volume in that box. So we saw a lot of that as well. Anchor bolt spacing, typically the bolts you see in your garage that come up through the concrete block into the 2x4 that you can see. Forever. I don't know why anchor bolts are so difficult, but we've seen a lot of anchor bolt violations. And last but not least, as far as number 10 is concerned, incomplete construction. One of the things we did to kind of try to cut back on some of this is we eliminated temporary finals. Usually in the winter, we've done these for free in the past because it's just unreasonable to assume that somebody can get their landscaping in December, January, February. So we used to do them for free up until like April 1st of this past year because of the way it was being taken advantage of with just more than landscaping. We've eliminated that option as well. So if they wanted a temporary final, they had to request it, pay for it, and then we as a city assigned a deadline to it in which we could follow up with re-inspections. Moving on to the fees section, I think you can see here, I don't know if we want to focus on anybody in particular, but they're listed from the greatest being Pulte, the least being Beezer Homes, and then if you move to the permits, you can also see how those fees translate to the number of single-family permits that were issued per builder. And for example, if you look down at Beezer Homes, you see that they only had 1 permit issued in 2021, but they had 47 inspections and 16 that failed. Typically what we do in a situation like that is once the first permit is issued and we have a means of enforcement, if we have high weeds and grass violations, erosion control violations, we have an open permit that we can enforce upon. So that's why you're seeing those odd numbers for one single family permit. But just to give you a quick breakdown, Pulte was obviously the largest, Beezer and Davis was the smallest. Lennar was in behind Pulte as far as new single-family permits at 165. But are there any particular questions for myself and what my group does?
How many total inspections were there? I'm sorry.
The inspection counts second column on the developer permit issued page. I
Right.
didn't total them up, but for Pulte example, for Pulte, they had 210 new single-family home permits that resulted in 2,462 inspections.
Yeah,
Now,
so I
a
was
lo-
just asking, like, what was the total of all those inspections for the year? I mean, 6,000? Okay.
Right.
So you guys pretty busy, huh?
Yeah, and some of these things, some of the inspections and some of the numbers are elevated because of consultations that we enter. So if my inspection staff is driving through a neighborhood and they see 7 lots that have high weeds and grass, being we don't have a particular inspection type we schedule these as a 550 consultation. It impacts the inspection numbers, and then we move through the enforcement factor and we can assign deadlines and compliance dates for those. So some of that is why those numbers are elevated. Lennar is the same way. There's probably, if I were to break this down, I would say there was probably 400, 550 consultations that were done proactively based off of those 2 builders.
And Pulte, $122,000 in fines.
That's correct. Pulte is at 122,250, followed probably by Lennar at 31,000. Now again, these numbers will probably be a little bit different because we could have a home that was on a temporary final but didn't actually close until the second week of 2022, and that data will actually be reported in a 2022 calendar year.
Okay.
So if I had to guess, I would say that number is probably closer to 150, 160,000. Our fee schedules are progressive for each inspection type. As I mentioned, there's 4 inspections. It goes from footer, under slab, framing, and final. The fee schedule for the first fill for a footer would be $75. The second one would be $150, and the third one would be $500. That progressive fee schedule applies to all four inspection types that we do. Any other questions?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I'm looking at the list, and there's a tally for inspection count and a tally for failed inspections. Is the difference, does that mean those are passed, or is
Correct.
there?
Yep.
It's either pass or fail
Correct,
and not?
yes,
And they're
pass or-
all documented?
Yep,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Anything else? Thank you, guys.
Thanks. And then just lastly is the subdivision section closeout. So once all of the building permits, I don't know how I'm doing on time here.
10 minutes.
Gotcha, thank you. We do a couple more inspections. So one is gonna be the sidewalk maintenance bond inspection. So that is triggered before the last certificate of occupancy is released for the last home built in a section. So that's really the last time we're gonna have a sidewalk installed for that subdivision section. And so we require at that time, the developer to bond all of the sidewalks in that section for it's a 3-year maintenance bond. So that way, in those 3 years, if we see any issues with maintenance, we have the ability to go in and correct that, because we really shouldn't see any issues within 3 years of it being installed. And that was a policy that was adopted by City Council, I believe in 2017 or 2018. And then we also complete a final closeout inspection for we call them subdivision improvement permits. There was recent state legislation that was adopted where we can't hold up the release of building permits for non-life safety elements of a subdivision section. So previously we were able to hold up the release of building permits to make sure that the perimeter landscaping was installed. We're not able to do so anymore because that's not considered a life safety element. And so now we complete those inspections at the end of construction during the section closeout. And so we will, and you'll see on the last document or the last page of the packet that you were provided, this kind of breaks out the different elements that we inspect for before we release for building permits, and then the items that we inspect for during closeout. So we had to break those into 2 different categories with that state legislation that was adopted. Before they were all just before the section was released for subdivision permits. So you can see here there's an extensive list of things that we're regulating for. This crosses multiple departments, and there's a lot of people out in the field that are looking at these sites day in and day out. And again, I just want to highlight that this whole process starts after our technical advisory review process. So there is about 6 months of review that staff is doing before we even get to this point, ensuring compliance with our standards. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. All right, well, I thank you all for your time. And like I mentioned, if you have any questions or specific concerns on these policies, I would please email them to me directly, and I'd be happy to get a separate work session put together at a later date.
Todd, can we get another meeting set up where we can have all the department heads in and go over all the questions I'm sure we have?
Yeah, I was hoping that we would the next council meeting, we'd have another work session where we bring everybody in. You know, tonight was not by any means to try to convince you guys that we're doing everything right. It's just grounding everybody in what we're actually doing now. And then the next council meeting, I thought we'd have the same group, but just then get feedback from you guys, thoughts about
Right.
what we can do, and have more of a discussion about where are we going, what's the right level of inspections, what do we want to do, fees and fines and things like that. So tonight was more of like a 101 type thing.
I think,
An hour.
I think an hour.
Yeah, sure.
And let's do an hour next
Yeah.
month, and then if we need to go, we'll just schedule,
And if there's any data points or any additional information between now and then that you guys want regarding this, let us know, because it does take a little bit of massaging to get data out of Viewpoint Cloud is what we use for our data points. So for Todd to draw up any of this information, or Megan, we just need some time to be able to crunch the numbers. So if you
I
have any of that,
appreciate
let
it.
us
It's a
know.
good foundation for us at least to get a dialogue going.
Yeah.
Well, you know what
Right,
we can
fair.
also provide too at the next one is the staffing levels for each one of these areas. So
Yeah.
here's what we're doing,
I-
here's how.
In fact, maybe even one of the inspectors that works
Yeah.
in the field that deals with it
Yeah.
8 hours a day would be,
Yeah, we,
Because
Yeah.
I
Brad
mean,
brings
when
them
you,
in.
Get it
when you look
from the
at,
horse's
and we
mouth.
can get into it then, but when you look at it, if you look at it like a business, you look at and go, okay, what's draining my resources the most here?
Right.
I mean, what's producing the most fines? What's draining our resources, so we're not beating our head against the wall a year from now going, okay, we've allowed this development, but we're continuing to escalate and whatever, so.
And how are these builders doing as far as addressing these problems and solving them?
right. And we can also hopefully bring some side-by-side comparisons, although I will tell you, everybody, and Todd can attest, and so can Megan, every community does it slightly different, so it's hard to do an apples-to-apples comparison. But at least on the accountability piece, we could talk about, you know, what are fines and things like that going forward. Because I think, Todd, you shared with me, Marion County doesn't issue reinspection fines, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So Marion County doesn't issue any reinspection fees. You can continue to fail the same inspection over and over and over with no financial burden as far as penalty. You know, one of the other things communities don't take into consideration, and the mayor and I were also discussing this, Marion County is a county that should be occupied by 27 building inspectors. Right now, they're down to 10, and that number is dwindling. And, you know, one of the big things and one of the big pieces that jurisdictional inspectors cover is your homeowner's insurance rates. ISO audits are done in every municipality in the state, and that is the number one item that drives your community's homeowner's insurance. So keeping your staff up and, you know, making your inspections. Right now, Marion County is missing 64% of every inspection that's scheduled, which means they're getting barely 4 out of every 10. We've missed 3 inspections in 5 years. So, you know, if that gives you an idea, apples to apples, you know, we just don't miss them. If we have to work over, work late, whatever it needs. But if there's any additional data we can provide, like I said, feel free to pass it on.
We're always looking forward to getting better, so we look forward to the discussion.
I mean, the constant fines for the same things is either gross negligence or willful incompetent. I mean, it's one of the two. So I would say escalate it big time, and we need to revisit that.
Yeah, and
There's
I
no
think-
reason
I think-
over and over again to do the same thing.
Chris will be also able to share, the building industry has a strong lobby in the State House. And so there are some pretty strong limitations on local government's ability to hold them accountable.
Why is
So
that not surprising?
we gotta go through that regulatory framework as well.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Let's rise for the pledge. Thank you for attending the June 20th, 2022 Fisher City Council meeting. We're going to go on to some announcements. Jocelyn, I know you had an announcement, and then Crystal has an announcement.
I do. Thank you.
Yep.
Today is the federal holiday celebrating Juneteenth. Juneteenth is originated on June 19th, 1865, when enslaved African Americans in Texas were told that they are free. This is considered the true end of slavery in the U.S. I would just like to recognize yesterday on Juneteenth, June 19th, just behind me at the amphitheater was Juneteenth Jubilee. This was a marvelous event if you were able to attend, and it was really led by students. The Fishers High School Future Black Leaders and HSE High School Black Student Union led the event that was full of vendors and music and just a remarkable celebration of Black culture, and also supported by 2 organizations in Fishers, Racial Equity Community Network and the Fishers Arts Council. So I'd like to recognize them and the Juneteenth celebration. Thanks.
Thank you. On to Crystal.
All right, so for me, I know we've got a lot to celebrate, but one thing that I do want to celebrate today is progress. I do not hide the fact that I am an active member of PFLAG Fishers and the Pride community. I do remember the hard conversations when the closet was more than just for shoes, and the fear that was brought on in hearing things like the Matthew Shepard story and others like it, but then we saw such support to advance equality in various forms, from the military service to state and federal legislation, as well as an increased representation for those holding public office. So while there are still some ways to go, I do have hope, especially in seeing where we were then to where we are now. So to the LGBTQ plus community, I've got your back. And I know I'm not the only one who will fight against intolerance and discrimination. Love is love. So thus, it is with great pride that I can read the following pride statement on behalf of City Council. So on behalf of Fisher City Council, we recognize June as Pride Month. This month, and always, Fishers renews its commitment to making our community welcoming to all. This commitment goes beyond public statements and social media posts, but to the policies we have in place and the policies we continue to refine. Fisher stands with the LGBTQ plus community and acknowledges the discrimination that so often impacts these individuals. This council has always stood in unity against LGBTQ plus discrimination. In 2016, we acted by proclaiming Fishers as a community that would not stand for discrimination of any kind stemming from a person's sex, race, color, nationality, origin, religion, disability, age, or gender identity. So that dedication continues today. From standing alongside students and parents to advocate for comprehensive anti-discrimination policy within our school system, to instilling these policies in our city's operations. This Pride Month, residents should be comforted in the fact that your city, your public safety, and your community stands with LGBTQ+, and we welcome all.
Thank you, Crystal. On to the Finance Committee report.
Todd, could I just make a couple more comments real brief if I could?
Yeah.
First and foremost, I want to congratulate our Department of Public Works. They were reaccredited nationally. They're the only department in the state of Indiana to be accredited. And actually, some of their practices are going to be used as best practices across the country. So Eric and his team, I really appreciate the work that they've done. And I did want to make a quick introduction to Jake Reardon Mcsoley. He's here. There he is right there. Jake's joined our team, and he's going to be heading up all of our quality of life initiatives, which are large in number and impact in our community. And many of you know him from the YMCA. He's a force of positivity, and we can't wait to have him on our team. And he's already tackling a number of issues for us. So Jake, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you.
Welcome, Jake. Good to see you. Congratulations. Is that good? On to John, Finance Committee report.
Yes, thank you, Todd. The Finance Committee met last week on Wednesday, June 15th, and are recommending for approval some items on the agenda. Item 7B, resolution of Common Council authorizing the City Controller to transfer certain funds. Item 9, recommend for approval, respect the use of proceeds of the City of Fishers, Indiana, tax of economic development revenue bonds. Item 10, item 11, and item 12. Those items were all recommended for approval for tonight's council meeting.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Jocelyn, Nonprofit Committee report.
I was not prepared to give
That's
this
okay.
report, but I will improv. The nonprofit grant committee met, I believe, just a couple weeks ago because there were numerous nonprofit organization applications for the grant that were received. Don't quote me on this. I think there were 27 local nonprofits that submitted an application. The committee met and reviewed those applications, kind of weeded them down just slightly, but what we realized was we needed to meet again, this time with the Fishers Health Department in the room so that we could talk especially about the applications that were for social services offered by nonprofit grants in our community to serve our community. So part 1, we have finished the first pass at all those applications. Part 2 will happen at a meeting at 8:30 in the morning on Thursday, June 30th. And we hope to have a recommendation to the City Council after that meeting.
Thank you very much for being flexible, ready to go. Okay. Item 6 is the Health Department report. That's, as always, it's on the Fishers website. You can pull that up at your leisure. Moving on to the consent agenda, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by John, a second by Selena. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on to item 8, R062022D, a resolution of the City of Fishers concerning tax abatement compliance.
Hi, Jordan Alexander with Economic Development. So this is a resolution to approve the CF1s submitted by the entities receiving tax abatements in the City of Fishers. So as you're aware, each year, entities receiving a tax abatement have to submit their compliance forms to ensure that they are in substantial compliance with the jobs numbers and investment numbers that they had committed to the city upon receiving their tax abatement. So this year we have 20 active tax abatements that are being claimed, and actually all of those were substantially compliant this year. So no real surprises. Staff recommends that we go ahead and approve these CF1s in front of you so that we can send them to the county and those abatements may be claimed. Are there any questions?
What's the word substantially mean? 80%, 90%, 70%?
These were all completely in compliance, so they exceeded jobs numbers, so definitely met the jobs numbers that they had agreed
So the
on.
word substantially can be removed from those 20, is what you're saying?
Yes.
So I would tell you, Brad, that that's a statutory definition of substantial compliance. So what Jordan and Megan and her team do is we check our economic development agreements or our project agreements against the commitments that projects have brought forward in alignment with the abatements that we've offered. I think what Jordan's telling you is that there's absolutely no issues. The commitments with all the groups that are on here today are fully compliant.
Okay.
There is a determination that you can get into if you're 85, 90% compliant,
Right.
whether you want to tell somebody on a good faith effort, and we've had those conversations in the past. We think they can get there, or no, they might need to come back before the council to have a further conversation.
Okay.
It's also on the compliance form on the backside, it's the checkbox of either is substantially compliant or not in substantial compliance. So it's just based off of the state form. That's exhibit B.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'm sorry, I did have a quick question for Jordan, very quickly. Last year, there were 15 businesses that received tax abatement, and one was out of compliance, and we adjusted their arrangement, their agreement. They're on the list now. I just want to kind of just circle back to them and say they are now, there's 21 this year. They are all in full compliance, including the one that we discussed last year.
Correct. So with ThyssenKrupp was the one that
Yes,
last year
thank
we
you.
had discussed. So we actually took away, they did not claim their abatement last year, but we gave them an additional year. So including this year, they will have one more year to claim their abatement. We actually gave them until the end of 2022, so this year, to hit their 105 jobs number.
Their requirement mark.
Correct.
Right.
And so they're at 94 jobs this year, but again, they have until the end of this year to hit that 105 number.
So they're on track.
On track, correct.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for that.
The motion stands.
All right, motion by John, second by Selena. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, motion passes. Moving on to item 9, 051622A, an ordinance amending ordinance number 081516J with respect to the use of proceeds for the City of Fishers, Indiana taxable economic development revenue bonds.
Thank you. For the record, Lisa Bradford, City Controller. The item before you is the second reading, amending the bond ordinance related to the Spark apartment bonds. As we discussed last month, this amendment will allow the around $1 million that is left in the bond fund to be used related to amenities in the downtown core, predominantly for the Nickel Plate Trail for security purposes, along with some additional amenities in the area. But amending the bond ordinance allows us to use these funds wider than the original ordinance was written.
All right, do any questions, comments from council?
I do.
Jocelyn?
Last month I had asked for a report of all the expenditures dedicated to the nickel plate trail to date. We just received that report today. So that didn't give, frankly, me a lot of time to review it. I have a couple questions on the report that was provided to us. One is, can you provide, so what this action is doing tonight, and I appreciate I'm kind of moving kind of 10,000 foot view from there though. What this action is doing tonight is moving just over $1 million into, to be able to be used for the nickel plate trail project in different regards, right? In order to be spent. Invested.
The nickel plate trail and what I would term the downtown core, which encompasses this whole and kind of entire area, not just predominantly the trail. It does incorporate the trail, but does give a little wider area to the area, you know, kind of downtown where the first internet building is, some of those other downtown core areas here. It widens the usage.
Right. So just before we consider moving more dollars into the project, I wanted to get a really good understanding of how much has been invested in the project before. According to the report we just received, 19.7 million has been expended so far. And how does that compare to the project original budget? I kind of struggled to figure out what the original budget is to understand how we're doing with this project.
So, and I will say there are what I would term some different components of the trail, and I'm sure Jason Taylor, our Director of Engineering, or our mayor can speak more to this, but there's kind of what I'd term the master plan and the outer loop, which is kind of the extenders of the trail, and then there's the north approach and the south approach, which are kind of, and those are all three kind of very different projects that all have what I would term different budgets related to them. So it's not a one for one.
If you look on our website for the trail, and this was posted back in September of last year, we had the tunnel at 13.75 million, which was available on our website for anyone who wanted to see it. And I think when we finally did the numbers, and we apologize for being delayed, Elby was on military duty and then at COVID, so he's at a double whammy. But we have the tunnel at 13.1 million. So last September, we forecasted the tunnel being 13.75 million, and it came in at 13.1 million. We also have on here 3.25 million for the other sections of the tunnel. That was also on our website last fall, and that number's a little bit lower than the 19 million because that only took us to 131st Street. We were able to find some additional funds to be able to take that all the way to 146th Street. So to Lisa's point, if we go way back, I can remember the days of when we first announced the trail, we had thought about $1 million a mile for just asphalt, and we really didn't articulate what the crossings were going to cost because we didn't know if you're going to bridge or a tunnel or what you're going to do from an infrastructure standpoint. Well, one of the great things that we've had about this build, operate, transfer agreement for the tunnel is once we entered into that contract for 13.75, you can see that's a gross maximum cost that you're going to pay. So from our perspective, we've held pretty close to that number for when we awarded the contract in September of last year.
For the tunnel, and again, I thank you for that information. I absolutely appreciate. My questions are more the 10,000 foot view. I think anytime we do a substantial city project that is multifaceted and runs over many years, I'm trying to understand much better the overall scope of the project, how it is tracking with original projections, where the funds are coming from. And so the two last points. One is the memo we received today. I do very much appreciate receiving it. I would like to make the request, Mayor Fadness, that the website that you were talking about that really is available and searchable for the public, to have the breakdown of how much has been spent so far. I think that's fair.
We just need to update the one section, the 131st.
Well, and I think, if I may, I think the part that is complicated is that understanding of the different pieces as they were originally presented to the public and how we are now.
Okay.
And I think just, it's not very apples to apples. It's hard to discern, or I should say, it's very hard for me to discern
Yeah.
how the project is tracking.
Okay.
In addition, like, great news, we received a $4.5 million grant, next level trails grant,
Yes.
so that's being invested. I'd also like to understand better, and for the public's information as well, of course, kind of the next steps for the trail, what will be invested in the next year.
Yeah, and I think those
If
are,
you
you know,
please.
it's interesting as you think about a big vision, which the community that put together the 2040 trail plan, there's lots of things on there that I don't even know that they put a budget. It's a vision document.
Right.
And then you go do particular projects, right? So I think, you know, if we end up doing a health and fitness node by the YMCA, then that would be a conversation that we can talk about, okay, well, what's the budget for that and what are we going to accomplish? So I think I don't know that I can provide you a total cost associated with a 40-year vision for that area.
Totally, I
But I
understand.
think we could, like you said, as we do the 96th Street section, with that grant, we're gonna do the bridge over 96th Street with grant dollars. We can talk through that, make sure we're all on the same page about what the cost associated with that is. We'll continue to update this website as we go too, so people who are interested can at least know the amount of investment that's been put into this trail to date. But you know, obviously we're pretty excited about it, and we think the tunnel turned out amazing.
Yeah,
So
there's
we're
no doubt
excited.
it is
Yeah.
a great amenity. So that information, again, available not only to this body, that's our responsibility, but accessible to the public is important. And I would like to make one last comment. In this memorandum, I have to just point out, the tax rate was increased in 2019 to pay for part of this Nickel Plate Trail project. And that is not reflected in this memorandum. And this is important to me to have that noted, and noted accurately, if you please.
Sure.
Yeah,
So I'd
and
like
I will
that
say,
corrected.
in 19, we did not, the Nickel Plate Trail was not levied as property tax in 2019. We didn't end up taking the bond out until October of 2019, so our first debt service payment was not until 2020.
I understand, but I just want, again, I just want to
So
be clear.
I'm just saying, when we're talking about the year, it's not in 2019. There's not a property tax increase related to the trail in 2019.
Yes.
The debt was brought on and the first payment was made in 2020, correct?
Yes.
And what was our tax rate in 2020? Did that go up in 2020?
That I'd have to look at, I don't remember.
That would be the thing we would double check
Yes.
on before we.
Well, and again, just to be precise about this, and that's really my basic point here, is in 2018, when the 2019 municipal budget was presented, it was presented with the recommendation which passed to increase property tax rate. For one of the reasons to do that was to help fund the Nickel Plate Trail project. That happened in 2018 for the 2019 municipal budget.
Right, but
Right.
I'm saying that what was it did not actually happen due to bad interest rates at the time. We did not issue in December of 2018, and so therefore it didn't get levied in 2019. So it didn't actually get levied until 2020.
But that doesn't negate my point, right?
Well, we'll just,
Well,
we'll clarify both. And
Yeah,
make
we're
sure that the
clarifying both. I'm
members
just saying
agree.
there was no Nickel Plate Trail debt in 2019.
I wasn't talking about debt, I was just talking about increasing a tax rate.
Let's just,
That's
let's
right.
just note both.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, I
please.
just, yeah, they
and-
are two different. Thank you.
Okay,
They're related to two different, I just wanted to make that clarification
I hear you.
also, that the debt was a 2020
I understand,
first,
I hear you,
first
thank
debt
you.
payment.
All right.
If that
Thank
makes
you.
sense.
Any other questions or comments from council?
Certainly, I'll make a couple of comments as chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, how this all came about. The administration came to us one time for a bond issuance.
Correct?
Correct?
Yep.
And there was a slight tax increase to pay for those bonds at some point in time. It did happen, for sure. You weren't on the council yet, but I was there. No. So that did occur, just to kind of explain this. I think one thing that also occurred during this process is, the cost of this project, and I chaired the visioning committee for this. We had no real cost in mind. We were just giving ideas, and the city can pick and choose what ideas they wanted to do to make this trail an amenity. And I think one of the best amenities we've seen is this tunnel. on 160, which was very expensive, but from a public safety perspective, Chief, you can chime in, from a public safety perspective, this is the best thing we could do to keep our residents safe, is to have a tunnel underneath rather than having folks trying to do some type of dance across 116th Street to walk on a trail. We're going to save lives with that tunnel. It's ADA compliant. People that have mobility issues are going to get around on this trail. So it was a lot of money, but I think life's worth a lot of money too. I think it was money well spent. And you look at the economic development that's occurred in this community because of that trail, because we had that trail there. I think it's, again, a great long-term investment. And we'll continue to put money into that trail to make it even better. And everybody in my district is very, very positive about this trail.
Well, and look, I mean, to be honest, there's no smoking gun here. I mean, it is expensive. It was a complicated project, and we were very forthcoming. I mean, you can go look it up in the frequently asked questions. What is the cost of the Fisher's portion of the Nickel Plate Trail and the tunnel? And it says $13.75 million. Now, it ended up at $13.1 million, so we're $25,000 off. But I mean, the information's there. We do need to update because we were fortunate enough to get that 146th Street section done. And part of that is by finding, frankly, creative uses of funds that aren't being dedicated to something else to be able to accomplish this without having to come back to you with our handout saying, please issue more debt or anything like that. So one of the sections in here talks about how are you funding this project, and it's through a variety of infrastructure dollars. So we tried to accomplish that without coming back for issuing more debt, and I think we've done that. And we're excited to finish the south end and keep the project moving. But as always, we take the feedback seriously, and we'll update the website, update the memo, and move on.
Yeah, just bear in mind, you never came back to us for additional bond offering or a tax increase. I think maybe to clarify, there's been no tax increase to complete besides the initial bond offering that we had.
Correct.
And due to our strong financial position, we're able to do that and finish off this year, really do it right, without costing taxpayers additional money on that end.
And
I
we were
just wanna
successful
say
in
that,
getting a grant too. Excuse me, sorry.
I just want to say that I appreciate the fact that we did not have to make additional bonds to complete this. This is one project within the community that I will tell you, just this past weekend, I had 2 people telling me they took their bikes to 106th Street, rode up to 146th Street, called me to complain that they could not get to Forest Park in Noblesville. I told them, you have to talk to the county and to Noblesville. I'm not doing it. But they absolutely loved the trail. And I think that that is one of the best things that this has spent. But I don't want to just compliment the economic development that it's brought. I think that this tunnel has the capability to draw the economic development that is over by Monterey and the Monon in Carmel. I think this can be just as busy. I think that it will bring life, even more life, into the downtown, and I think it's a huge amenity to our community.
It sure beats the heck out of the feedback we got on the Michigan lefts at 96 now. So I'm issue debt for that. So
I didn't vote for that.
Just one other thing, if I remember, Mayor, when we discussed this, the cost to do a tunnel was much less than to do a bridge.
a bridge would have been, because Duke would have had to move their transmission lines, which Chris, I don't even think, money aside, I don't think they would have done it. Just couldn't do it. So appreciate your guys' consideration on this.
All right, do we have a motion to approve?
Also moved.
Second.
Motion by Pete, second by Selena. All those in favor? It's John. Sorry, Pete. In honor of Pete, he's usually here and he's usually saying it right away. So
I don't
John,
know if it's
I'm
a
sorry.
compliment or an insult.
I don't. No, it was a compliment. You were quick to the motion.
I'll take it.
Motion by John, second by Selena. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on. Thank you, Pete and Selena, right? Yeah. Yes, that's right. Item 10, R062022C, resolution of the Common Council for the City of Fishers, Hamilton County, making a preliminary determination to enter into a lease for Town Hall. This is public hearing. One of these public hearings, we do not vote on, is that correct?
This one.
This one.
So this is gonna be the first reading of this resolution with the public hearing.
Public hearing.
We'll bring it back next month, have another public hearing, and you'll have a final vote
Got
on the
it.
resolution.
Thank you.
So, yep, so Chris stole my thunder, so just some background on this. So this item, you actually do not take any action on tonight. It is really just an introduction and a public hearing regarding our preliminary determination to enter into the lease, which is the financing structure we are using to build the arts and municipal complex that will occur right here on this current ground. So as we have been discussing, this is the next step in that process. So if you'll recall, last month we brought before you the resolution that pledges funds of not to exceed 6.7 for the project. So after this month, next month, you will see this item again with another public hearing, and then you will see what I would term the final financing at the September council meeting, and at that time, you'll have another hearing on the public hearing on the lease and adopt a resolution for the execution of the lease, and then you'll appropriate the bond proceeds at that time. But this item is really the introduction and kind of an intent to enter into the preliminary determination for the lease with Town Hall Building Corporation. As we have discussed, it's a bond amount just under 17.5. I believe it's 17,440,000 is the bond amount, and that will be used to construct, as we have discussed, the arts and municipal complex here at City Hall.
All right, we'll go ahead and open up for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, state your name and address for the record. Step forward, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Seeing no one coming forward, I'll close the public hearing. Oh, sorry, come on. My apologies, come on down.
Bear with me 1 second. Mark Young, 10304 Watercrest Drive. Appreciate the opportunity to come forth. Appreciate the job that the city has done with the State Road 37 Roundabout project. It's wonderful. Looking forward to the completion of it, not only aesthetically but functionally. The job that you guys have done with that is great. So the reason I've come forward tonight is just to bring attention to the deterioration of some of our secondary roads.
Sir, this is for, so we have a public comment at the end of the council meeting, but this is specifically for this item.
Oh, I am so sorry.
That's okay.
I am
So if you could wait until the end and then
I
come back
apologize.
up. It's fine. It's all right.
Thank you.
It should
It's
be a
all right.
quick meeting. We'll move through it quick.
It's all right.
Well,
Yeah.
Mark, it's good news, bad news. Good news is you get to speak, the bad news, you gotta wait till the end.
I thought that topic was closed.
It's okay. So anyone wishing to speak on this item, item 10, you can step forward, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. See nobody coming forward, I'll close the public hearing on that, and we'll move forward to item 11.
Can we have a motion to have first reading?
First
on the
reading?
Do we
resolution?
need to have that? Okay.
Thank you.
Pete?
Good job, Pete. Thank you. Pete, I hope you're watching this. I doubt you are, but I hope you're watching this.
All right. I'm going to discuss items 11 and 12 just together because they interrelate. So we have to have public hearings on them separately, but I want to talk about them together. So the request to appropriate additional funds for both motor vehicle highway and local road and street funds. So it's a twofold purpose. The motor vehicle highway funds, as we discussed at our finance committee meeting, are predominantly related to redoing a lot of our streetscapes. So there's a listing we discussed at finance committee. I won't read those verbatim, but what it is to help improve safety for our DPW employees who are out there maintaining these areas in a very dangerous position. So what we can do is kind of reduce some of the landscaping, improve the aesthetics, This does feed into our climate action plan that we've been discussing. So it encompasses a variety of purposes, and in the long term will have a lower maintenance cost overall. So that's really what the predominant use of motor vehicle highway funds is for. And then the local roads and streets, and our director of engineering is here, so he can correct me if I misspeak on this, related to a lot of our road resurfacing contract to finish that up, along with some one or two additional projects that came in. But the road resurfacing contract for 2022 is a lot of neighborhoods, parts of 116th Street, some parts of Promise Road, Florida Road, and some of those. Like I said, a lot of neighborhoods also. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I think the two roads of note that are added here, it's really an additional scope, but to try to get 106th Street done between Lantern and Cumberland is one of the additional items here. And then as the gentleman said earlier, the secondary roads, obviously we're trying to hit those hard. The 136th Street from Cynthia to Atlantic has really deteriorated badly, and we need to get that done too. So we're fortunate enough to have these pretty significant cash reserves, and we'd like to add this on top of what our normal road resurfacing projects are, just to try to stay ahead of the curve.
I have a question on the one improvement, 106 between Lantern and Cumberland. Although in my colleague's district, it's certainly a road I travel on. What are we, just resurfacing?
This is just simply road conditioning, a resurface. Okay. We did sign a contract with a design firm to start doing some preliminary work for a complete reconstruction of that, but that's probably a handful of years out, and we really don't think at this point that road's gonna hold up until we can file for federal grants and be able to actually do the full design. And we want to, and as David Giffel and I have talked about, we want to include some residents in those conversations too about what's their vision for that corridor. So that's going to take a little bit longer, and we just don't think the road can withstand that. So we want to get out there and get that resurfaced yet this year.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Lisa, if I remember right, at our meeting, you mentioned what these funds would take care of are road improvements and also landscaping that was on the hit list planned for this year. Correct. So
yes, and then like the mayor mentioned, there are some additional. So it's what we had originally planned, and then some additional scope of projects.
Got it. Okay.
And our goal with this landscaping, to be honest with you, guys have seen our crews. They're out there mowing 2 and 3 times a week in a dangerous environment where we're wasting gas, wasting man hours. At some point we need to, we can still do something aesthetically that looks good, but doesn't require people out mowing 2 and 3 times a week. So we're trying to make that transition now so that, long term, we can put as much money as we can into the actual asphalt road versus paying for a bunch of people to go mow repeatedly out there.
Rocks look good and you don't have to mow it.
Yeah, exactly. Rocks, native plantings.
And Britton Falls would love for you to take out Oleo Road from Southeastern so we don't have to keep looking over the top. Just take the whole thing out.
I see there's a number of residents here tonight that might have a comment about that, so.
We just thought you were trying to make the west side of Fishers look.
Well, that's part of it. I mean, if you can look good and be less expensive, all the better, right? So that's the goal.
All right, anything else? Any other comments? All right, open this up for public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, item 11?
Todd, I just, maybe right now it's appropriate for Mark Young, since he was gonna talk about roads, I think we should give him a chance to speak at this.
You want to talk about roads now, here, or you want to wait till the end?
Yeah.
Come on up.
Go for it. Either way, you got 3 minutes. That's wherever you want to spend it. Okay.
2 minutes and 59 seconds.
All right. No, you got it. You're good.
Bear with me. Yeah, so I appreciate some of the comments, but really what I wanted to do is just shed light, which you already did, on concern over the deterioration of some of the secondary roads. As I said, State Road 37 gonna be phenomenal when it's done, but, just concerned about the condition of the roads from a safety perspective and also in terms of an appearance perspective as the perception it gives you of the community and also just in general the residents' view on it. It's always a hot topic. So I have taken the liberty to drive as many of the streets as I can. I haven't gotten through all of them, but I've actually started to photo document those roads that I think are of significant issue and highlight where those roads are. I haven't got through the whole city, but kind of over to Allisonville Road. Haven't really quite gotten all the way over to the east side. But I do have photos I'd be happy to share with the city and continue in that effort moving forward to photo document those which are the worst and need attention. So I think that you guys are, it sounds like there's maybe some funds to address this moving forward, you know, now that some of the other projects are done. So that's really what I wanted to speak about today. Don't know who I...
Well, if I could get your contact information, you have a card or anything like that, my engineering director, he would love to sit down with you and kind of compare where you think the investments need to be versus how our PACER system and our rating of all of our roads, and see if there's alignment there. I will tell you, in general around roads, we're fighting a war on two fronts. We're still a growing community, so we're trying to invest in upping the infrastructure capacity, while at the same time we have these, for the first time in our history, we have roads that are coming due that just frankly need to be maintained. And so that battle is always there, and that's something we're always trying to work on here. And I do think, you know, our goal in the coming years needs to be really focused in the neighborhood. And, you know, we've made some improvements where now we're not just doing small sections of road in the neighborhoods where you have this, like, looks like a quilt work patch of road.
Yeah.
Just doesn't look good versus going in and resurfacing the entire road curb to curb. That makes a big difference aesthetically and really long-term as well.
Right, I agree 100%. And, you know, one road you mentioned in particular I've documented is Promise Road.
Yeah.
You know, there's multiples like that. And just FYI, in today's world, actually smooth payment improves gas mileage as well. So
we could all use a little of that.
We could all use that a little bit. I'm not sure what the cost return is on that for the expense, but so I do appreciate you listen. I'd be happy to work with
if you have a card, I'd be glad to grab that and have follow up.
Yeah, I recreationally drive the roads, so I'll be happy to, you know.
It's a volunteer helping out.
Do that at the same time. One other thing I do want to bring up, if I have any time left, in the Rosewood subdivision, I don't know if this is a city item or not, but candidly, when that community was developed, the main thoroughfare of Watercrest Drive was built too narrow. When there are large graduation parties, et cetera, we have people parking on both sides of the street, and literally fire and safety equipment cannot get through. So I think it's something, if the city can address that somehow, I don't know.
We got a guy here that can look into that. Our police chief can take a look at that neighborhood and see if there's any parking enforcement issues.
Okay, sometimes you can't even get a car through, much less a fire engine. And, you know, could be life-affecting for someone. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but this year it was really bad, so.
Well, I'll follow up with you after the meeting.
All right, great.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We have a motion. It's item 11. We're on item 11.
Motion to approve.
Motion by John. Second by Selena. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 12, R06-2022A, a resolution of the Common Council authorizing the city controller to appropriate additional local roads and street funds to the City of Fisher's municipal budget.
So Todd, Lisa just presented on that in combination as well, so if you just want to hold
Just
the
open the public hearing now. All right. We'll go ahead and open up a public hearing for this item, item 12. If you wish to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Seeing no one stepping forward, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have any motion?
Motion approved.
Motion by John. Second by Selena. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 13. R062022E, a request to approve an interlocal agreement with Hamilton County, Indiana concerning the construction, inspection, and maintenance of Bridge 314, Nickel Plate Tunnel. Is
Good
everybody
evening
afraid they would
again.
come forward?
No, I was sorry, I was engrossed. For the record, Jason Taylor, Director of Engineering. I'm going to actually present with Chris Kreisel as well, as we've been working together on this particular situation. So this is the Bridge 314 with the, for the Nickel Plate Tunnel and the trail. Whenever we classify it as a tunnel, it's essentially, it's more of the layman's terms for us, but in an engineering world, technically it is a bridge. And the city does not own, maintain, or operate any bridges in our inventory. So we have coordinated with Hamilton County, who by state statute and other means and methods, they own, maintain, and operate that. With this particular one, we want to be able to have the ability to do what we really want inside that tunnel and not be bound by a formal process to have to go through the county to get approval to do anything. We paid for it. We want to also be able to improve it with any future master plan items that our team is able to come up with. So in this interlocal, it is really focused on the city owning it, and we will maintain it. But what the county will do is they will pay for the inspection, the annual inspection of that, and depending on the needs of it, they'll give us those reports, so they have a consultant on board to be able to perform that. We'll just work hand in hand with them to handle. We'd be happy to answer any questions. Chris, any additional? Okay.
Any questions or comments from council? We have a motion?
Motion approved.
Motion by John, second by Selena. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to
And
item 14.
one other item real quick, and I didn't realize Jason was sitting behind me, but he did alert me to the fact that Promise Road, as a gentleman brought up, that is on the resurface contract this year to be done. So that's one of them at least we'll knock out.
All right. Moving on to R062022F, request to approve a resolution adopting the fiscal plan for Milford Park annexation.
Well, I'm sad that Pete's not here because I don't have any presentation prepared and only have annexations to discuss. But the first item is for the Milford Park annexation. So this came before you all for a public hearing last month. This is for the fiscal plan adoption and then final reading. And this is for the new subdivision that's proposed off of Florida Road. That's the Lennar subdivision.
All right. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Do we have a motion?
Motion approved.
Motion by John, second by Selena. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 15, 051622E, request to approve a voluntary annexation of 60 acres.
Motion approved.
Motion by John, second by Selena. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 16, R062022G, approve resolution adopting the fiscal plan for Lehman annexation.
Yes, and I'll present 16 and 17 together. Again, this is just for the final reading and fiscal plan adoption for the Lehman PUD. This was a new subdivision that's proposed off of 126th Street. It is a Pulte subdivision that you all saw earlier this year.
Okay. Any questions or comments from council?
Motion, go ahead.
I would like to make a few comments here on this one. I mean, it kind of relates to this project. One of the things I'd like to see is that we visit some of these issues that we discussed in work session to see if we can help some of these builders, especially Pulte. I have concerns about this development. I'd also like to see us to get, as a body, some direction for HOAs a little bit more as they transfer over. We just have several new projects or new developments getting ready to start, and I'd like to see us to be able to get them off on a good start to, to benefit the residents. I don't know what we can do. I know one of the big things is the rentals that's allowed in these neighborhoods. I'm not sure what we can do about that, but I do know I am having a lot of issues with boarding houses popping up in Sunblest, and I just, like I said, it goes back to as these housing developments come online and we start to build them out, I think we need to have a plan to address some of the concerns of the residents.
Also, Megan, the discussion was that street's illegal, but you said you would have the engineering and your other boards look at that and get that changed. Did you change that to where they have a circle or something in there instead of an illegal street?
So the rezone allowed for the length of that road, just because the site is really constrained, and our fire department
Our
was.
ordinance doesn't allow that.
But it was a PUD ordinance, so it did allow it as a part of that PUD ordinance, and so our fire department has signed off on that access.
So we're not making them change like we make other developers change the street.
We are not making them
So
change
Pulte
it
gets
within
to
that
do
development.
what they want with that project, but the other developers have to put a circle or something. Okay.
Any other questions or comments from council? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Motion by Selena to approve. Or second? Second by John. John, don't throw me off. Come on. I already have enough trouble as it is. Motion by Selena, second. I almost said Pete just then. You need to stop. Second by John. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And Brad's nay. Move on to item 17, 051622F, and you went over that, correct? Do we have a motion?
Motion approved.
Motion by John, second by Selena. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And one nay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then 18 has been crossed off my list. Is that
That's
off?
correct.
Okay. Any unfinished or new business? No. Move on to community comment. Anyone wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, Doug Allman, 16124 East 126th Street. Do you have any ability to project documents?
We should. Where's the?
Before you do that, let me ask a question to the mayor or who can answer this. 126th Street, east of Cynthia Ann Road. Do you have an MOU or control of that road?
From the county?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking? Not to my knowledge, I don't know.
Because aren't you maintaining that road?
On 126th Street, east of Cynthia Ann, that's county.
Okay, so there's no MOU or anything that you control, so speed limit in that's affected would not be controlled by you. You cannot effectively change, that is what my request being, since.
We can coordinate with it, and we've made requests in the past on other sections of the roadway, this particular one, and I'll double check.
Okay, because that essentially, I've been asked from neighbors, both along my street, as well as Britton Falls, to request that be dropped to where it's consistent 35 miles an hour, because it's 35 miles an hour on Atlantic Road, it's 35 miles an hour from Atlantic to about the entrance of Britton Falls.
What's it posted now, Doug?
So right there at Britton Falls entrance, it goes to 45. And so what we have happening is the people coming, from the west to the east, they're just really getting on it. And all those drives along there are single entry home drives. And then they're hitting that crosswalk that is right there by the park that people are utilizing. We even have golf carts going across there, a lot of foot traffic, bikes. And I mean, there is a charger that lives in the one subdivision there, Piper Glen, that he's doing 80 by the time he hits those entrances down there. And it really needs to be, they're still gonna drive fast, but it's even with that 45 there, it's even being made worse.
Well,
So-
I want to speak on behalf of Jason, but I don't know why we wouldn't support working with the county to get consistency and reduce the speed.
because again, there's very few, there's Piper Glen and Turnberry, and there's not single entry
Well, it's
drives.
developed a lot out there. There's really no reason for it to be that speed.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, they're 35 right there in Atlantic, which has really no entranceway. They're 35, but we've got this 45, and they're just really, it's really becoming a problem. It's a dangerous situation.
We're happy to lead the way to coordinate that with the county, get them to drop it.
That essentially is my request, so I don't really have to present that. I do have one other thing that I would like to engage in, either personal conversations with council members, the mayor and whatnot. I say this as a trustee as I come before you, but things right now with the trustee's office is very unusual, and we're seeing high amounts of inquiries as this ERAP money or this federal money has come off. And that program, which we had a little hand in too, as far as administrating some of that, standards were set lower, and now as that's come off, people are coming in. Of course, we're dealing with face-to-face conversations, and so we're having some very difficult and unique conversations that I haven't experienced in my time as trustee, even where we're getting threatening and hostile conversations going on with my employees, which I then have to step in. And we've created a thing where we've enabled some people. We've helped some people, but we've enabled some people. And we've had people move here. We've had apartment complexes that have rented apartments during this COVID situation where there was money coming in, and now this is coming off. These folks have not, some of them didn't have jobs before, and they don't have jobs now. And so the apartment complexes are going through eviction. So everything is last minute. And some of the apartment complexes don't even want, if we can help people, they don't want to take our assistance. So it's a very high stress. It's very unusual. We have not seen this at the height of COVID. We haven't seen this during COVID. And now we're seeing some very difficult conversations. And I speak on behalf, Debbie Driscoll, who at Delaware, will tell you the same thing. And we see this with other townships as well as we meet. But I just want to make you aware of it. But we have some bad apartment complex who are, in fact, they're going through management and staff and employees. So I just want to make you aware of it. Be happy to engage with further conversations. But it's frustrating for me as a trustee when you see employees that have to wear panic buttons. And this is highly unusual. And so I just want to call it to your attention.
Yeah. Sorry you're going through it. That's ridiculous. Hang in there. All right, anyone else wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak, and I don't want to be rude. When that red light goes off, I will cut it off, all right? Thank you.
No problem. My name is Tim Serber. I've lived in Fishers 37 years. I work at Sand Creek Intermediate as a special education IA. I live at 12902 Mondavi Drive in Britton Falls. I'm here to talk about the danger that we live with on our street. We have 41 homes on our street, and we're all senior citizens. I'm one of the younger ones at 65, but we have people going down our street anywhere from 30 to 40 to 45 miles an hour. Last winter, there were 2 times I stepped into the grass by my mailbox, and I was this close to getting hit by cars. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not okay. It's very dangerous. I have a bad knee from a football injury, and if I'd have slipped, I'd have been a dead man. And what I'm really worried about, is it gonna take a death before something happens? This is a senior citizens community. We need help. We will take any suggestion, but I will tell you, that the neighborhood that's not ours, the young people, they come flying through, sometimes on 2 wheels. And they've hit trees, they've hit mailboxes, and we are all very, very, very scared because we're not going to get any younger. And I'm going to keep mine very short because I know Joyce has a lot more than I do, but I know you'll take care of it. I've lived here 37 years. I know the police department, the fire department, rescue squad, the mayor, and the council are all fine people. They are all about everybody in our community. I talked to the police chief this evening for a little bit. He stopped by as one of the patrol people trying to check it out. And I know that you will take care of this situation because we, as senior citizens, really can't do much other than what you can do to help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, can you hear me? I don't think you can
Yes.
see me. I didn't get the requirement.
I can see you and I can hear you, so you're
requirement.
good.
You had to be 6 feet tall to present. Okay, I'm Joyce Slusher. I live at 12876 Mondavi. And thank you very much for letting us come to speak. I am very nervous, so
It's
I
okay.
haven't done public speaking
It's
for
all right.
quite a while.
Relax.
So,
It's okay.
Okay, but you know, I wanted to talk about Mondavi, as Tim just mentioned, and I think the gentleman that spoke before him too kind of leads into the kind of that general area that there's a major issue. But as you can see from the prior speaker, the numerous emails. And we have a lot of people here from Mondavi, as you'll see from the attendance. But we've reported major instances of safety concerns. Residents on Mondavi, put this for a second, we're not just concerned with our safety, we're concerned with ourselves, our pets, everybody that lives in Britton Falls, we have a lot of walkers, not just from Britton Falls, bicyclers, golf carters, and all of our visitors, including small children, our grandchildren. Incidents have been involving property damage, hazardous backing out and pulling into driveways, along with excessive speeding, not only of cars, but trucks, delivery trucks, contractors, those kind of things. We are an active community. We are 55 and over. And we've got restrictions with hearing, sight, mobility, which makes the current situation many times more dangerous. Let me give you a little bit of background, and thank you to one of our residents, Nancy. Mondavi and its sister street, Bartolino, are the only residential streets that serve as major transportation corridors to surrounding roads, Cynthia Ann, 126th, and Atlantic, from within Britton Falls neighborhood. The other 2 entrances are served by Del Webb Parkway. Now, Mondavi was not designed properly to be a through street to a major corridor. Barbara Way is the entrance to Britton Falls off of 126th, which feeds onto Mondavi and Bartolino. Mondavi gets the brunt, though, of the traffic that's trying to get over to Del Webb and head north into the development. Okay, because it is the quickest way to the northern part of Britton Falls. Okay, and then access for people that are going over to Atlantic. The level of traffic has ebbed and flowed the last few years due to road construction. But the growth of Britton Falls community has increased traffic on Mondavi, especially commercial trucks. It is noteworthy that Del Webb Parkway does not have mailboxes, it does not have driveways, and it's wider than all the other streets. So they have used 2 regular, if you will, residential streets that then feed out of the complex, okay? Creating a very hazardous situation.
Hey, ma'am, your time's up. Do you have if you want a last thought or statement, that's fine. I know you were a little nervous, but
Okay.
we just have to wrap it up.
We've collected solutions. I have a full list of solutions that I will email to everybody.
That's
and I
great.
did talk to the Lieutenant Burks, and they are already going to do some going drive-bys and stuff in unmarked cars. But that's not a long-term solution, and that's very expensive. So, we don't have speed limit signs on Mondavi. They've been requested in the past, but for some reason or not, they have not been put in. We've been a little creative. I would like to show this real quickly. We have tried some things that were not acceptable to all the residents, but I will just show you this quickly. We did try this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't acceptable. So.
That's not standard?
Just
It's standard. I think we think it should be standard. But this is how creative and serious. We are very serious about resolving
Yes.
this issue.
Well, I
just,
think,
just don't throw tennis balls at moving vehicles. I've seen people
No, I
do
haven't
that.
thought of that
Don't-
one, but
don't
I'll
do
add
that.
it to the list, Mayor.
I think,
Okay.
All right.
Okay,
maybe
we-
So,
what we could do, ma'am, I talked to Chief Gephardt over the weekend, because I got these emails
Yep.
as well, and our engineering director, and I think you put it exactly right. There's a short-term Band-Aid, which is putting a bunch of EDS folks out there, pulling people over. That'll bring awareness and probably slow things down a little bit. But the longer-term conversation is where engineering, and our team would really like to sit down, and maybe there's a group of representatives from your
Absolutely,
area.
they want to be involved.
Yeah.
They want to be very involved.
So maybe if you volunteered as the point person, both Jason, Ed, and our team could sit down with you and really think through how we're going to solve this for the long term.
Oh, great.
But not to get Ed off the hook, we're still going to put police officers out there and be ticketing your
Right.
neighbors.
Right.
But long term, we got to come up with a better solution than that. So,
Right. Well, I just want to mention one thing real quick. I'm sorry,
Yes.
I know I'm over
You're fine.
time. But I think we need to strongly look at what is going on with the entrance into Mondavi and Bartolino. So, the street, I'm sorry, Barbara, thank you. That could be, there's a lot of options there, up to fully just close it. And then, or make it one way, or make it just for emergency vehicles. And one last thing, sorry, I did talk to the Lieutenant Burks, visited me today. The response has been incredible. Let me tell you something. Where I came from, I would have waited 6 months for somebody to even call me. And then I did talk to Jason Taylor, and he said he would, meet me here after the meeting maybe, and personally, and he's on it too. So all we're asking is for your help to help pursue, give us the resources, give us the creativity, and then take action to make this happen. And yes, I
Thank
can
you,
be the
ma'am.
coordinator.
Thank you very much.
my guess is some of your neighbors will lament about the response of the police department here in the next few days, I guess. But that's
Well,
okay. That's part of the process.
It's for the safety of all of
Absolutely.
Britton Falls.
We'll connect with you after the meeting if that's all right.
Yes.
Okay, great.
All right, anyone else wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, I'm Ross Reinhardt, 7704 Creekside Court. I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm feeling inspired by my neighbors because I was driving home down Ellisonville southbound just this past weekend, and there was just a real audacious moment where I was going a little over the speed limit, a couple miles an hour, and I was passed by somebody going faster than that. Then somebody else passed them, weaving through us, and then somebody else passed both of them going like, I don't know, like 80, But I wanted to say something because, it's not a unique experience that, I felt this on several of our roads, even right through the middle of our beautiful nickel plate district here. It's 25, which seems, appropriate. You get over 20 and the risk to pedestrians goes way up. But one thought I had is I don't know that we can throw this entirely on enforcement. They're working so hard to do enforcement for us, but I think we're also going to have to, as you alluded to, have engineering solutions. How can we make the road feel the appropriate speed while you're driving on it? And maybe even automated solutions. We have got the technology out there to, can we create automated solutions to help us enforce the limits we do have? And maybe, help avoid the appearance that, the city's just trying to get money by extra enforcement. Maybe we could come up with a creative solution like the fees collected from that go to like the 50 Club or some nonprofit that we could get behind. That's all I want to share because I had also been feeling frustrations about speed, especially after that experience this past weekend. So
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Just remember, everyone, since COVID, I remember driving into work downtown Indy in 2020, like right when everything shut down. I had to go in just to print some stuff up, and people that were on the street, which were few, were driving unbelievably out of control because it was like a wild, wild west. And I think that mentality just in everything in our lives right now seems like that in every aspect of our lives. And so it is hard. I mean, our officers, you know, you see the speeding, they also are dealing with taking guns off the street. Chief could go through a litany of things that they're putting their lives on the line to protect us of things that none of us really see, okay? So just remember that in the scope of everything. I think it's good to have a strategic conversation about how we can go about these things, but there has to be personal responsibility at some point in our society for us to get by and live together. And we have to get to that point. They get accused of pulling people over for all sorts of reasons, right? And so then all of a sudden, the more they pull people over, the more accusations fly. And so there's always this tension there. We hear you, I understand it. In my neighborhood, I see the same thing down 116th Street. I live between Hoosier and Brooks School, and I see people literally they have to be going 80 miles an hour. But it's not everybody, right? It's just, there's a few people. But officers can't be everywhere every time. I'm just pleading with residents. There's gotta be personal responsibility in our lives, because you can't rely on an officer to always be there. It's not humanly possible. All right, anybody else wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. We'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, President Zimmerman. Good evening. Abraham Wondergem, 16331 Loire Valley Drive in Britton Falls. On March the 31st, in a scant 1 minute and 14 seconds, ownership of Britton Falls was transferred from Pulte to the Britton Falls residents. The duly elected board of directors assumed control of responsibility. It was not given to a hand-picked committee by Pulte. No thank you, no goodbye, no promise to work with the community to resolve any issues. The board of directors got up and walked out. The Pulte board, that is. It was the ultimate slap in the face to the residents who created millions of dollars for Pulte. The new board of directors is talented. They're going to need it. They were given a mess, from waterfalls to roofs to pools to trails to landscape. Many things need attention. The cost to maintain the ponds was not even listed. The reserve fund and operating cash fund will be severely challenged, and the previously discussed before council supposed loan of $140,000 by Pulte has now been revised. It's now $350,000. The loan itself violates the PUD in all criteria for establishment of a loan. In my opinion alone, it's illegal. The board with our attorney is attempting to negotiate with Pulte. We have been told there are crucial issues that Pulte refuses to cooperate with. The board and our attorney shall decide the way forward. Whether it involves litigation, that'll be their decision. With that event, Fisher's involvement would remain to be seen. For months, Pulte controls and zoning have been issues presented to this council. In the past, council members have been concerned creating a layer of ordinance when existing ordinance addressed PUD concern. My question is this: if there were existing ordinances, why was Pulte allowed to knowingly and willingly violate the conditions of the PUD for Britton Falls? Why were they allowed not to maintain the community in accordance with the PUD? Earlier, Director Vukovic this evening outlined changes in PUD enforcement which are welcomed and commendable, but they do nothing to help Britton Falls. The question is, hopefully, that Fishers will follow these new provisions. Well, here's a quote from the past. Well, this ordinance could catch some additional things we missed, but they're just adding cost to the developer, which goes to the homeowner and adding regulations. That was from Tony Bagato, the ex-zoning director. Missing things? What are you being paid for? It's easy to understand why the statement that developers run Fishers has had perceived merit and truth. Hopefully tonight starts a reversal of this perception. Oh, the poor developer. Fiscal 2021, Pulte profited $1.945 billion and exceeded their projections by 158%. On each home that Pulte sold, the profit average was 39.5%. Poor developer. Can't afford to maintain the development they own according to the standards of the contract they signed. Just write the PUD so the residents will pay for it, because nobody's going to enforce anything. Hedge fund investing in group real estate investment is not the only problem that is occurring in Fishers right now. PUD enforcement and zoning present a threat that is equal in scope. Please live by your new standards you put forth this evening. Thank you and good evening.
Anyone else wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Seeing none, I'm going to close the community. Oh, go ahead.
Not on the agenda. I am Steve Heffelmeyer. I live in Britton Falls, 1660 Ventnor Drive. Right, Brad? I do commend everybody tonight for participating. To the mayor, I think the one thing I've heard here that Brad objected to was a driveway or a drive or a street that is not going to be wide enough at a new Pulte where he wants to build. And I heard one person say the fire chief was able to say you don't have to have it that wide. It doesn't make common sense. That needs to be visited by the mayor, by the council, and probably get the fire department chief in and say you can't do what we don't want done. That's all I've got to say. And I'll be volunteering for anything you want to do over on Mondavi, because I drive there too, and I have been in law enforcement. I know the chief. We've both been to the FBI Academy. Appreciate when you're in the area a lot, and I see a lot of your unmarked cars. I would say, and I'll talk to you later, hit the damn siren button and let the people know that you're there, that live there, because they don't know you're there, and I've talked to them too. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. State your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Nancy Coughlin, 12903 Mondavi Drive. And I wanted to piggyback on that gentleman about 126th Street. If you're talking to the county about the speed limit, could you also talk to them about paving the road? Because it's kind of a patchwork of, and every year it has about 6 different things they keep filling when it's chuck hole season. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Change the topic briefly. My name is Randy Siebert. I sent an email to a number of you. I'm at 129 Northland Street in Sunblessed. Just to have you, those of you that got the email, to please read it and look at it. The intent is around the show that ended up on the national news about Fishers and the rental of properties and what's going on. And we can't push it off to the homeowners associations because a lot of places don't have homeowners associations. So we have to do something as a community to get this under control and figure out what we need to do. And I'll leave it at that. Hopefully, I'll be glad to help work with people as need be. Thanks.
I think there's a solid agreement up here that something needs to be done. So.
We're working on it. Legally, there aren't a lot of pathways forward because this is uncharted territory, but if a community is going to figure it out, it's going to be us. So we're working on it.
Bless you. Anyone else wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Seeing nobody, I'll close the community comment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Selena and second by John. We are adjourned. Have a good evening.